Welcome back to the Build Your Base podcast. I am the host of the show, Jack Thomas, and today is part 2 of our interview with Erik Verspui, who is one of the founders of Paleo Robbie. Paleo Robbie is absolutely my favorite meal and grocery delivery company here in Bangkok. So I was very happy to get Erik on to tell his story on how he started Paleo Robbie. And also we discussed today the challenges of building a business in Thailand. Before we crack on with today's episode, I'd like to read a review which I think was left after last week's episode with Erik, and that is great tips on food and how to be a better and healthier you. Thank you for your review. I think that was in reference to last week's episode. It's really great to read your reviews, so please, if you haven't already, leave us a review on iTunes, leave us a few comments, let us know what you enjoy about the podcast. If you haven't heard last week's episode, do go back and take a listen. That is part 1 with Erik. And do enjoy today's episode of the Build Your Base podcast. Paleo Erik, it's a pleasure to get you back on the Build Your Base podcast. How have you been since our last chat?
Hi Jack, it's good to be back. Been doing very well and look forward to our discussion.
It was great to talk to you about the paleo diet in the last episode. If anyone hasn't heard that episode, please do go back and check it out to get up to scratch. Today we're talking a bit more about what it's like to build a business in Bangkok as a foreigner. So first up, just tell us what you did before you started Paleo Robbie, because it wasn't in the meal delivery business, was it?
So Paleo Robbie got started in 2013, but actually I've been in Bangkok as an international expat since 2006, and the first company that I started had nothing to do with food delivery. It was in 2010, and the company was basically focused on water recycling. So of course we would recycle like wastewater, especially from commercial properties, back into clean industrial water used for gardening, cleaning, etc.
How did the idea for Paleo Robbie come about?
Well, the idea for Paleo Robbie really was triggered by my brother Robbie coming to Thailand. So he came to Thailand especially to Phuket, to do a 3-month paleo detox. So he went from a unhealthy Western diet, Western lifestyle, to a 3-month completely, whole foods, get some sun and exercise every day diet for 3 months, and he had such a awakening of what a difference that made, especially his issues with asthma and migraines, being overweight, all that disappeared, and he also gained a lot of muscle without actually doing any exercise. So that's where he became really passionate about paleo lifestyle, and he really wanted to share that with everyone. So he started cooking for his friends, hiring a chef, doing meals for people, and at some point okay, this needs to be a business. Eric, can you please help me to do that? And that's
so you came in and brought the business side in. He had the cooking side basically, and the story.
Correct. He has the story. He had the biggest passion. I was already quite active, so doing lots of sports, so I never had any health issues. Obviously the paleo lifestyle resonated with me, so I adopted it as well, but I didn't necessarily feel like, oh, this is what I want to dedicate the rest of my life to.
You mentioned in the last episode there was a moment when referrals meant that the customers were coming in and they were multiplying, and you kind of had a moment where you realized it wasn't a hobby anymore, but it could really be a business. Tell us more about that point when you really realized the potential that this had in Thailand.
So we really started this purely as a hobby, and it kind of sounded great to have a chef, who makes fresh meals for you every day, and you can split the cost with 30 or 40 of your friends. So that was the concept behind it, and it was just done all from our townhouse on Thonglo. But then they started referring their friends, and people became quite enthusiastic about it. This is really when especially blogs and books were written on paleo and all this ancestral wisdom things that made it really popular, resonated with people. It was trendy back in that day, so a lot of people jumped on the bandwagon. And within 6 months we suddenly had 600 people filling in a Word document. That's how low tech we were in the beginning, to submit their orders for next week.
So how has it developed then into the business that it is today? So a lot of things have changed. You've got a great website, very slick, very easy to order. Tell us about some of the steps that you went through to get to where it is now.
I think we're in terms of business infrastructure and business model, we're at generation 5. Generation 1 being, just operating from our own home, you're just having Word documents and having no infrastructure whatsoever. We had one assistant and one messenger. So costs were really low, but at some point it became really stressful because me and Robbie were doing a lot. It became a 7-day-a-week. After, I think it was 9 months, we made the decision to kind of scale up. What was it, Sukhumvit 81 area. We got like a whole townhouse. We invested a couple of $100,000 in kitchen equipment. We got first a French and then a Greek chef to actually make meals every day. I made a website together with some coders that I found on Upwork. Okay. So it was,
the team was growing.
The team was growing. So obviously we made less money, but it was a real business at that moment.
Okay, and tell us a bit about where it's at today. How does the company Paleo Robbie look in 2020?
One of the biggest things that are totally different. We started as a meal plan service, so you just order once a week for all the meals that you wanted to eat for next week, like minimum hassle, turn nutrition on autopilot. But that actually is only interesting for a small percentage of people that just want to put that on autopilot and know where they're going to be every day of the next week. We introduced, I think 2 years later, 2015, a grocery service. So all the ingredients that we found, because that was a lot of work, going through hundreds of suppliers and talking to importers, importing ourselves, getting import licenses to find whole food and healthy ingredients that were at that time simply not available. So if you went to a Villa supermarket or a Tops and you wanted to buy like frozen berries, like blueberries, known for their high amount of polyphenols, antioxidants, everything was from China. We were like, what? And there was quite a few health scares of any food products from China at that time. So like, okay, that's not responsible. Let's go to source these things from places like Canada, New Zealand, where they have really high food ethics and they really enforce strict rules in terms of food production. We had to work quite hardly and intensely together with importers to get all these products in. And luckily today, if you go shopping at Gourmet Market or Villa, there's much more variety. And I would say you can find much more healthy ingredients today than back in the day. And I'd like to take a bit of credit for that.
Yeah, no, I think you certainly played your part in that. So just to give us an idea of how much it has scaled, how many employees do you have today?
Well, because of COVID-19, we had to scale up quite rapidly. So
you're one of the few businesses that must have benefited from this time, right?
Yeah, it was a very busy time, a bit stressful for the team. So we had to
less stressful than losing a ton of business there, probably.
Yes, but it was stressful for the employees, right? Because they're like,
right, yeah.
Holy shit, do I have to pack 100 boxes today, like by myself? Because everyone had to do 100 boxes versus only 30 just 2 weeks ago. Yeah, so we started the year with about 50 people and now we have 65.
Okay, so started with 2, you and Robbie, now at 65. Tell us about some of the lessons that you've learned in the last 7 years since you opened up.
Whew, wow, that's a lot. I would say patience is a virtue. Like this is Thailand, things work the way they work in Thailand. You can't force it.
No.
If you decide to choose a business that is mostly appealing to a niche market, you just have to be realistic about how big or what you can do. Today, though, I think 2/3 of our customers are Thais, so things have changed dramatically, partly due to the education things that we've been doing in the last 7 years. But yeah, the business has grown fast, but not in the areas that we thought they would. It's completely unplanned.
And what are some of the difficult things, would you say, about doing business in Thailand as a foreigner?
Actually, Thailand is, I would consider, very business friendly. It's very easy to start a business here. Of course, there's
more than people think, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of legal and bureaucracy, but to be honest, compared to other countries, you can, once you find your way in the gauntlet, or it's not that expensive, and in the end, everything is possible. So it's very friendly, I would say, to start a business. But then to scale a business, I would say that's where the difficulties start, where you need to find people that are gonna match your culture, gonna work with the system, and that you can really rely on, and that are gonna help you build a business. I would say yeah, if anything has held back the growth of the business is being able to find those people. Like currently, Paleo Robbie is run by people that have been with like a management team, mostly Thais, who are been there for 3-4 years and are very good at what they do, and they're really the ones that run the business today. But to get to that point, that was not easy. That took patience, time, and actually quite a bit of luck.
It's difficult anywhere, right, to build a good, strong team, I think. Thailand is no different. So things have been pretty good during this time then, people being stuck at home, ordering things online, that's benefited Paleo Robbie as a company?
Yep, definitely, for sure. People thought, oh, people are just going to order like mostly meals, but what we saw is that people actually started cooking more. It was actually,
Trying to do something
that was the
positive,
surprise
right?
that people couldn't predict, that the meals, of course, was up as well, because instead of having a lunch with friends out at a restaurant, people would have their own lunch while working at home. But people had more time, I think, and people also think groceries that actually helps you save cost. So the grocery definitely benefited the most.
Okay, that's good. Glad to hear the business still did well. Erik, tell us about some of the initiatives that you've worked on in the last few years to try and get paleo into the hands of more people, and specifically into the hands of more children, to try and educate them, because I think that's a problem all around the world, isn't it? It's poor eating habits from kids.
So this is something that we were both, I and my brother were quite passionate about, and one of the first things we did in the first year of Paleo Robbie already was starting to talk to international schools. I think ISB was one of the first ones. A lot of the teachers, they really liked the concept, though most international schools, it's actually quite a few teachers that order the meals from us. So they invited us to come and speak. We've done teach-the-teacher sessions at several international schools.
Were they quite receptive to your message?
People working at the schools were very receptive. They really liked it. Like, yes, they agreed with everything. It was the challenge really became when it started involving the kids. So because then it's like
you can't really expect them to care too much about it, right?
Because in most international schools, the food is outsourced. The cafeterias are outsourced by a company that has to make money. The thing on whole foods versus processed foods, what processed foods always has over fresh whole foods,
Right.
Profit margin. It's not competitive. Let's put it this way. So there's a premium of whole foods that you need to be willing to pay, which as an individual, as a consumer, is a choice you can make. But if you're a child at a school, you don't have that freedom.
I guess you have to sell it to the parents, really, right?
Well, to the owner of the school, right? Because the owner of the school will then have to see that increased cost, negotiate with whoever they outsource the food and beverage to, which they're going to try to find shortcuts wherever they can, and they not always it's like a totally new concept for them, so it wasn't attractive for most of them. But I know there's several schools like NIST who really took whole food philosophy to heart. And most international schools also removed soda machines, which is a good start. Unfortunately, I think at every international school you can still buy Mars bars and Twix and Maltesers on campus, which is a bit inconsistent.
Do you think we've seen some progress though in the last 7 years?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It was absolutely horrendous 7 years ago. If I had kids, I wouldn't send my kids to a school for that reason.
Oh wow. Okay. You'd be homeschooling them.
Rather than letting them eat crap. And I think when my nephew was born, so Robbie had a son about 5 years ago, when they go to early school as a toddler, once he found out what they actually got secretly for lunch, he pulled them out as well. And he's now moved to the Netherlands.
That's the trouble with knowing too much. You get too
Exactly.
paranoid, you can't enjoy life anymore.
He even offered for Paleo Robbie to sponsor the lunch of all the kids. And the principal of the school just said no.
Really?
Yeah, conflict of interest.
That's a shame.
It's too political.
That's a shame. Especially when you're really genuinely trying to do something good with a big gesture like that.
Correct.
It is a shame. And this is important stuff, kids eating the right food. I think childhood obesity is one of the saddest things you can possibly see, right?
Exactly.
They've been failed by their parents, their school, the system. No kid wants to be overweight, right? Kid wants to have health problems related to that.
I think the events that maybe we're most proud of is when we got the chance to educate the kids. So especially Berkeley International School, they're very proactive, and they let us do seminars in front of all the kids. So they packed like hundreds of kids in a hall, and we would do like 2-hour interactive seminars with them. And we were surprised how engaged they were and how educated, much more than their parents.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's an encouraging sign. So NIST, Berkeley, shout outs to those guys for doing some of the right things. Any other shout outs for organizations that are doing things right?
It's been quiet in the last few years, to be honest. Paleo is no longer trendy, right? But I think what the main message is whole foods and avoid processed foods. And I think people got that, and more. But it's still, all schools in Thailand, especially the international schools, they run for profit. So there will always, I'm afraid there will always be tension. Right. And there will not be a 100% whole food school anytime soon.
Yeah, it's one of those things you need to start seeing a consumer shift. If parents start demanding healthier foods, and it kind of spurs the schools to actually do something. Hopefully some of the listeners are in the school system and they can make some positive steps forward. So Erik, any of our listeners that are thinking about setting up a business in Bangkok, do you have any advice or tips for them?
So over the last 14 years I've been here, there's quite a few people, want to start a business and ask questions, and I've seen them get started and seen what they do wrong. And I think one of the first things that I would advise people is like, focus also on the Thai market. Don't focus like also just selling to English-speaking people. The market is just too small.
Especially now, right?
Exactly.
Expats leaving.
And if you start a business, you need to be in a business or a market that's significant enough so you can build up enough scale that the business can sustain itself. Otherwise, it's just going to be a lifestyle business, and you're just going to be an employee with very uncertain income, which is what most people end up doing.
Yeah. Any other common mistakes that you've seen? You said you've seen many businesses start and maybe not do so well. What's been the common traits of success or failure?
No proper business plan. Research. So before you start a business, you should spend hundreds of hours gathering facts, gathering data points, and working out a proper 3-year business plan at least to see what is the market, who is the competition, what is the competition offering, why are you so unique, how can consumers see that you are unique, that's very important, and how are you going to be better, cheaper, and higher quality than them. And if you don't have answers to all of that, delay it. Don't rush into it.
Yeah, I think that's certainly something you did very well at the beginning. You certainly had a unique proposition, right? No one was doing paleo food. No one was really doing healthy meal delivery. So I think that was certainly something that helped you stand out, and that helped to get my attention for sure, having just kind of taken interest in the paleo diet when you launched 7 years ago. So well done, Erik, on your success. 7 years in, what's next for you and Paleo Robbie?
I think Paleo Robbie still has most of its potential ahead of itself. So we're doing a generational leap at the moment, so we're investing a lot in infrastructure and new services. I can't go into too much detail at the moment, so
teaser for us.
You'll probably have to invite the Paleo Robbie CEO, John, in 2 months or so to drop those bombs on your podcast.
Okay, a little teaser there. Thank you for sharing that with us, Erik. We will get John on at some point. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast again. It's been a pleasure to have you on, Erik, and I'll catch you soon.
Thank you very much.